Okay, Keith here from Beat the Casino. I wanted to talk about a little bit about how we choose what information, what statistic we're going to be using and looking at when we decide to make a bet. And I think it's important when you're playing Baccarat, all the great players do. They always consider making a bet, okay? They don't actually make a conscious way to play before they actually walk into the casino. They go in and evaluate what's going on in the game and what statistic or what data, actually it's more statistic because we're doing trend analysis in Baccarat. What statistic is relevant to them making a bet? In other words, which one has more of an impact? And we should actually assign a variable to the significance of different statistics as it relates to when we decide to make a bet, because some statistics in Baccarat are a lot more significant than other ones. Okay, so I thought I would start with a rote system and show you how a rote system determines what data it uses to make a bet. Because if you understand this, and it's pretty basic, and maybe you do understand it already. If not, great. Here we'll explain it. But you really need to evaluate what is prompting you or telling you to make a bet. What statistic or information are you using? And obviously, different bits and pieces of information. Some are good, some are better. Some have zero relevance. Some have more significant relevance. So at Beat the Casino, we try to teach you which ones have more significance first off, okay? So let's take a look at a rote game, okay? A rote system. Let's say, for instance, we're going to play time before last, okay? So I want to look at what information time before last looks at before it decides to make a bet. Now, it's easy to see what we should bet in this game here because obviously the game is already played. But what I want to demonstrate is what information are we going to look at if we were playing this game, just walked up to it, okay? So I'll put a scorecard in the view here, okay? And let me move it over a little bit. So if we're going to play this game, let me flip this over. If we're going to play this game, let's say we're in the casino, we didn't really see anything. Now you can play this hand by hand in the strategic Baccarat interface to practice, but the purpose of this is not to show you that. But what information does a system use to determine what to bet? And this is why I want to show you that one system will not beat everything. It just uses usually one or two bits and pieces of information, and then that's what it uses to determine what's to make the bet. So in time before last, to play this time before last, let's use the vertical scorecard here. Okay, the first hand was won by player, so I'm going to put a circle there. And to play time before last, you have to have at least two hands. So I'm going to circle that. So all time before last does, if we X those out, is look at the hand prior to determine what to bet. That's the only information it uses. Now, you have to figure out for yourself how significant is that information. So if you're playing time before last, it's very simply, you're going to go ahead and bet player here, and that won. Now you're going to go ahead and look at what hand won the time before last, okay? And it was banker, okay? So now you're going to bet banker, okay? So unfortunately here, on the fourth hand, it was player. So you can see the only information it's going to use, I'm going to go back here. Okay, well, it's player here. And then what happened? Well, banker won. Okay. So now I'm going to go back again. I'm going to say, okay, what won the time before last? Well, it was player. And guess what happened? Banker won. Okay. Now I'm going to say, okay, what won the time before last? So you can see it's only looking at one piece of data. Okay. So here, yet again, you go time before last, here, player won again. And then finally, the information, the statistic that it uses, wins. So that's time before last. Now, what you can see here, obviously, is that it's going to lose to certain things. And one of the culprits of time before last, the real culprit, is actually two in a row. And if they come in sequence, you're going to lose a lot of money at it, okay? So that's the point of it, is it only uses one piece of data, okay? And is that data significant? Well, when you're on a long run, I guess so. But one of the things, the reason you can't win a lot of hands, you come in at about 40% if you continue to play it, is first off, it's going to lose to these 2 in a row patterns, okay? And then also, too, well, you don't know when these long runs are going to bet, so you're always going to lose your last bet. So in combination with these patterns that it loses, and then after the long runs end, all those bets combined compromise the 40%, about the 40% hit rate of time before last. So it only looks at the data. It only looks at what hand won the time before last. That's the tracking mechanism and the data that says it's significant, okay? So if we think about other things, let's take a look. Let's say, for instance, we were going to play this game opposite time before last. Well, opposite time before last, I'm just going to put it right here, just looks at a different piece of data, okay? So we need 2 hands to get started. And the opposite time before last looks at the time before last hand and bets opposite. So here, if it was player, it would bet banker and then player 1. Okay? Here it was banker, so it would have bet player. And fortunately, notice time before last lost that bet, but opposite time before last won that bet. So you're still looking at the hand before what won, but it's just analyzing it a different way. It's saying, okay, well, that statistic says that most times I'm just going to bet against what it did. So it's an old Baccarat thing where you look at the hand before, and then either bet opposite or bet with it. And that's what the difference is between opposite time before last and time before last. And how you use that data. I'm either going to bet with it or I'm going to bet against it. Well, sometimes you'll see here I'm going to bet here, and of course, banker wins. And then the opposite time before last bet would be here again. Then notice here, the opposite time before last bet wins. And then when I bet it again, it wins. Now it goes here, and I lost. So that information seemed to do a little bit better in that game, especially when you run into 2 in a row and 3 in a row. Of course, the culprit is when you're going to run into these 4 in a row, 5 in a row, 6 in a row, where it's going to not switch sides for you. So that is data analysis. That is trend analysis. That's how we use the data. So rote systems simply look at trends. Let's take, for instance, if we're going to play this game, System 40. Well, 40 bets opposite, and it actually uses 2 pieces of data, okay? It says, okay, I'm always going to bet opposites. So I'm going to put the player and banker here. So, okay, well, that's pretty easy. I'm just going to bet opposite. Okay, so there, that wins. And I'm going to bet opposite again. Oh, that was easy. That wins. Now, pardon me. I'm going to bet opposite again. Well, that won. Well, I'm still going to bet opposite. Well, that won. Now I'm going to bet opposite again. Okay, well, that lost. Now I'm going to bet opposite again. Well, that won. Bet opposite again. That lost. I'm going to bet opposite again. Now, that lost. Well, let's go a little bit further. Oops, okay. So now I'm going to bet opposite again after that 3 in a row. Well, that won. Okay. So now here, let's bet opposite again, and it comes over to player. Now we bet opposite again, and it stays on player. Opposite again, stays on player. Opposite again, it stays on banker. It goes over to banker. So you lost 3 in a row. Now sometimes what happens, the other statistic that it uses is, you know, for fanciness they call them modes, okay? But really it's how many times in a row you lost before you change, okay? So that's the other piece of data that System 40 uses, is how many times in a row you lose before you change to something else. So in this case, originally it was published with after 3 losses in a row, you bet repeat. Sorry about that. Well, unfortunately, it went back over to banker. Okay, so in a System 40 type approach, it bets, the data it uses is always bet opposite, and when you lose 3 in a row, bet repeat. So it uses two pieces of data. Okay. Now, how significant is that? Well, those are things that you have to decide. Now, these are single parameter data, as I call them. Okay. It's just either this or that. Okay. We have some other things at Beat the Casino which do a much more sophisticated trend analysis, which is what I'm trying to do is get you thinking in trend analysis and statistics and data and what statistics are using. As you can see, sometimes this stuff's going to work and other times it isn't going to work. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at maybe something that uses data in this game that's a little bit more significant. Okay. So I'm going to get a new card in here. Let me fold this here a little bit better so we can get a little bit more in this screen. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you're sitting down at this game, and instead of betting right away, you go, okay, I'm going to watch the game, and I'm going to record the game, so player, and I'm going to look for maybe a trend, do some trend analysis on some things by just looking at the data. Okay, so, well, what do I see? Okay, I see one thing that I have 1, 2, 3 opposites. There's a repeat here, and a couple strong sides. It may look like while we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. We have 3 bankers and twice as many players. So perhaps this is a strong side player. And perhaps maybe repeats tend to be a little bit ahead or seem to be moving in that direction. So what I may say here when I'm considering making a bet, instead of betting every hand like we did here, okay, I have a little bit more information that this is either going to turn into an OTB4L game, and I might make some strategic bets, or it might turn into a strong side player shoe because one, player's winning more. There's never been more than a banker 2 in a row, and player has gone to 3 in a row. Now, if you really analyze this shoe, where a professional would do, would probably, at this point, a professional player would probably go, you know what, this is probably a good time to bet one on player here. Okay? And he would probably stay on it, lose here, probably wait another hand to see what happens, especially after this one, after 2 in a row. And then when it goes over here, then he would definitely come in with strong side player and probably catch the streak here. So in the analysis of this, you're using data that is a little bit more, it's not rote, you're basing it on what you're seeing, kind of following the shoe, as we say. And this is some of the bases of following the shoe. You're basing it on what you're seeing, not what you're told to do. Like a rote system says, always do this when you see this, okay? But in our analysis here, and this is a very simple analysis, it is a kind of a single component analysis with statistics. It's just, there are a lot more credible statistics because one, you can see now that the OR count, as we would say in Beat the Casino, the repeat count is very high. Okay. The banker has not won more than 2 in a row, and the player is dominating even at this point, even if he would have waited this hard. You know, perhaps maybe you could have jumped in here and caught this one, but honestly, probably a professional player probably would have jumped in about here, grabbed that 4 in a row when it switched, waited, and then caught this streak. So those are some of the things we do when we're looking at data analysis. You can see that a rote system of just doing something all the time based on what happened the time before, or saying I'm always going to bet opposites until I lose, or is not so good. But what's a better way is to look at the data and go, okay, what am I seeing with repeats? What am I seeing with strong side? Anything along those lines, I could use that data and information to play the game a little bit more strategically. Okay, so that is the example of data analysis. In other words, are you seeing a strong side? Are you seeing things that are quantifiable? Or are you just doing something because the system tells you, which is why all systems lose. So this is the whole the philosophy of Beat the Casino is that we teach you how to follow the shoe. Now, these are just some basic statistics. We have some statistics that are much more valuable and relevant to what's going to happen in this shoe, and that's what you need to check out. So I thought I'd make this little video and try to explain it. One is, what is the most significant statistic that you're using when you consider making a bet? Okay, so this is Keith at Beat the Casino. Until next time. Okay, hey, I'm here with Jeremiah, one of our top players from BeatTheCasino.com. Jeremiah, did you have a good time playing tonight?
Had a great time.
Did you win some money?
I won a lot of money.
All right, would you tell anyone to join?
If you are not a member, you have got to join up. It is the best out there.
Hey, don't forget to check out our website for the latest Baccarat and Blackjack information. We have players from all over the world. The best players in the world are members of our website. And let me tell you, it's a lot more fun when you win. You could be a member too. Don't forget, BeatTheCasino.com.